Now the Maamarim of Ayish and Torah are hold on, let me bring up the hey Barbara, we're starting now. So the Maamarim of Torah are traditionally it's like almost a single flow of a Maamar of the story of Yaakov and Esav all the way to the end. Some of the Maamar are actually said in sequence within a certain period of time. So we've learned earlier Maamarim in the previous years. We've learned this Maamar before as well. So it's kind of based on what the Alter Rebbe is saying in the previous three Maamarim. So here we're talking about after Yaakov sends the messengers and finds out that Esav's not ready, like the Alter Rebbe explains, he's not ready for Mashiach yet. So, and he thought that maybe Esav was ready to give Yaakov willingly the high lights of Esav, because Esav comes from the world of Toyu, of chaos, but also has these tremendous lights that Yaakov thought maybe after the service that Yaakov did, Avodah Yaakov did in the house of Lavan, that maybe Esav also has elevated himself in that time, in the 20 years, and he was ready also to now combine efforts with Yaakov. And when he saw that he wasn't, and he was told by the angels he wasn't, meaning Esav was not ready, so it says, this is a continuation, so then he takes from what he has, meaning Yaakov took from his possessions, and he gives a mincha. Mincha, in this case, in the literal translation, means a gift. To his brother, Esau. So here the Rebbe says like this, we know that all the sacrifices, the general name for sacrifices is a mincha. Where's the proof? As it says in the first sacrifices that we find in the Torah, when it talks about Cain and Hevel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, it says that Vehevel hevi gamhu mimchayris sainu michel vehen, that he brings from the best of his sheep. Vayisha Hashem el Hevel vel minchasei, and the Torah says that God turns towards, acknowledges, receives the Hevel and his mincha. So the word mincha here, we see clearly means the sacrifice that Hevel sacrificed to God. As he says in the parentheses, Hagam shahayu karban mincha b'fnei atzmei, although amongst the sacrifices in the temple, and the tabernacle for that matter, there was the karban mincha, and actually the karban mincha represented a more simplistic tzomeach. It was based on the cakes made out of wheat and oils. So that was the mincha. Kamay mincha soilis umachvas, like the solas, which is the rough flour in the frying pot, etc. And that wasn't an animal. Achkol Torah he klal prat, but we know that Torah in general he has what we talk in general and a specific. So too when it comes to the prayers that were instituted as corresponding to the sacrifices. That call it tefillas bichlal nikraim mincha. The Alter Rebbe says that all prayer is called mincha, and he says in 73 he quotes Rashi minchasecha vaylascha, which are the tefillos. He quotes the Ramban kol karbanos kama tefillah yikro mincha b'kasev. So that he quotes Rashi and the Ramban Nachmanides to prove that in general prayer is called mincha. Nevertheless, we find tefillas mincha f'nei atzmei prat, but there's a specific prayer of the three main prayers, meaning morning, afternoon, and evening, that the afternoon prayer is called mincha. So too in general, the karbanos are called mincha. So meaning to say that the verse says that Yaakov sends a mincha to Esav is signifying the concept of a sacrifice. Okay. And therefore we see clearly that Hevel, who sacrificed a sheep, which wasn't a food, it wasn't a cake, nevertheless, it was called a mincha. So what does this mean? The Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe says, we'll explain. Kinoida, we know the verse, and the Rebbe quotes this many times in Chassidus, this idea that we say, Ani havai lo shenisi. God, lo shenisi. There is no change within God. I don't change. Means there is nothing that affects change within God. Not that I don't change my mind, but in anything else in creation, when you do something before you did it, you didn't do it. Now you did it. Something happened to you. Someone did something to you. That's change in a person's life. It means not all the change you're in control of, but change happens in the person's life. Here he says, "Ani avai lo shenisi." There is nothing that changes Hashem. And with that goes the idea that there is no mind that could grasp God. So you can't grasp the essence of godliness. And if you grasp something, you hold something, over there already starts the foundation of shanisi, of change. And he continues, and all the worlds that exist, which in the definition of world is space and time, doesn't have anything to do with God. He created the world, but he's not defined or limited within the world. Nevertheless, although God doesn't change, and there is no real thought that could grasp God. He's beyond any comprehension, not just the human comprehension, but the concept of comprehension. And the worlds don't take place by God at all, and he's not limited to the space. Nevertheless, he creates it all. Everything comes from Hashem. So though it comes from Hashem, the fact that God is the creator of everything, and everything that exists is only because God willed it so, and created it so, and keeps it in existence. However, it doesn't change God, that's something that's only by Hashem. The idea that there could be something that comes from something could be a source of something else, and the fact that it makes it coming into being doesn't change it. That's something that's godly that no other creation has. How does everything come into existence if God is beyond creation? It's that there's a manifestation, there's a ziv, there's a ray. The ray gives life and existence and creation to all that's out there. Like it says, Hoidai, the Hod of Hashem. The manifestation is Al Eretz V'Shamayim, in heaven and earth. And the Rebbe continues, and even this ray itself, from the essence of God, means the way the manifestation initially comes from God, it's the essence. The light itself is too strong. What he's building up to what Alter Rebbe is trying to explain is the sacrifices. So the gift that Yaakov gives Esav, Reb Shimon, and everyone else, Danny and Sharna and Ariel. So and Barbara, you already welcomed. So what he's building up to is that the gifts that Yaakov gives Esav is to receive a higher light that's out of typical containment. So first you have to understand that there's a concept of a light that's beyond containment. So he says, "V'gam orazu," this light that manifests from the essence, that comes from the essence of God. Means even if you have a defined light, which is already, so to say, the source of space, but if you were to create two squares, so the first square is also a square, the larger square, right? Like in a child's game, you have the squares that go into each other. So the square is also a square, but the large square can't go into a small square. So even if there's a light, doesn't mean that the world can contain that light. That creation can contain that light. The initial light was too powerful for the world to maintain its separation, its identity as a world, and still have that light, because light is so powerful, such a manifestation of the essence, that because the essence, there is nothing really in existence outside of God. So the light would have caused that even if there was a concept of creation, it would be totally nullified to God. So therefore, how does it work? That's called the Seder Hishtalshlos, the chain of creation. What means the chain? Just like a chain is a link. It's also, so from the top links go downwards. So too in space and width and depth, the light has to be contracted further and further and further until the most contracted light, which has it has a life force in it, but it's totally been redefined from its original light, can now give life and mainly give chayas, give vitality to creation, and creation shouldn't lose itself. The Hainu Kashal Shell is just like a chain. A ray of a ray of a ray. It's not just the chain is the hard to describe a chain of what we're talking about, to compare it to what we're talking about over here, is that a chain, all the links are the same. It's just that the more links you connect to the chain, the further down the chain goes. But not that the links themselves are different. But here, the lights themselves have to be redefined in this chain. So the initial link and the final link have no connection really to each other. By the time the final link comes, if you put it next to the original link, it's not even the same light at all. The Chomash, for instance, where do we see this? When Avram Avinu says, "Vanochi Ofer ve'Efer," right? That Avram, who's the manifestation of Chesed, He says the my chesed, the way chesed comes in, even to Avram, which was the great force of kindness, is like dirt. Like we learned in the Maamar, it's like the ash of a tree compared to the initial chesed, which is also a manifestation of God's kindness. So too, the chain, as it goes down in links, it's a redefined a manifestation. As the chain goes down, so say the light gets redefined, and it's just a ray of the light that's above it. In all the different levels and its separations and differences. We read this up and down, higher world, lower world. For instance, in order to go from the lower Garden of Eden to the high Garden of Eden, even presently, as the soul is already past its living space time and it's elevating in the higher worlds, it has to go through the Nahar Dina, or it has to totally erase any memory of the previous Garden of Eden, the lower level, because it's such a much greater light that if he remembered or she remembers the experience below, it would confuse the new the additional light or the higher light. And all this, the whole chain of creation is only from a ray of manifestation of the essence of God. Imrav mimat, whether we're talking about a large amount of light, not large in just in space again, but also in quantity and quality. Vimat or less. And he says, and we have in general, for instance, we have Olam Haba, the world to come. We have Tchias HaMeis in the time of the resurrection of the dead, which is higher than the world to come. Means that both souls and bodies could reunite, which is higher than the world to come. If the world to come is a time when there is no bodies, and then you have Elf Hazayin, where our world only exists until the 6,000th year. Incidentally, we're 214 years away from that. But then you have the 7,000 years, a whole other existence. And that's after Olam Haba and Tchias HaMeis, incidentally. It doesn't leave much time for Mashiach to come now. In the 7,000 years is the day when it's going to be like the absolute menucha. Like Shabbos is a time of rest. And all these levels that are tremendous differences between Olam Haba, world to come, the resurrection of the dead, the 7,000th year, is all a level higher above the next or lower from the next. So he says like this, in general, there's two ways of the chain operates. Means there's a concept in Chassidus, and this is the difference between an or pnimi and an or makif. Or pnimi means, the word pnimi means to internalize something. Makif means encompassing. Now, encompassing lights are not just, like I said before, the box that doesn't fit into a smaller box. It means that there are its identity, its character, and its purpose is to be encompassing. It means you have lights that are meant to be internalized, and you have lights, energy that's meant to be encompassing. Like for instance, in the person, the energies of the person that are called or pnimi, an eternal light, are in general be moach and midas, are the three intellectual components. The idea of chacham bina das, so means that we're internalizing an idea, so you have to understand it, and how you feel it. It's internalized into the midos, into the seven attributes, seven emotions. So that's an or pnimi. That's the idea that light should come in, that you understand it, and then you could identify the feeling connection to the idea. Meaning you could identify, a person there's the concept of a healthy manner where a person could identify why they feel a certain way. They could go up the chain. They can understand this. Their understanding of something is the reason why they feel this way. That's an or pnimi. That's an internal light. An or makif is by definition is meant to be an external experience. Outside of, it's not a contained energy. For instance, in a person, that would be desire is the higher level, tainug, and ratzin, want. But ratzin, there's a ratzin also internally, but here we're talking about the general ratzin. When you want something equally. The very fact that it's not broken up and defined, for instance, like when the body wants to do something, so it's equal in the foot and the head, it's all that means it's connected to general ratzin. Ratzin and tainug, pleasure and desire, pleasure, and want are considered an external light, outside. It's not broken into the person, and a person needs that. That's the kind of, a person lives with both. Like you have food and clothing. Food is internal, and clothing is external. So he said, there's two types of how the light comes into the system. Hishtashus oyers bekelim, the light's going into the vessels. Like I said, pchinas pnimius, that's internalized. Shulfi erach hakeli, and again, the light matches, mixes, fits, like something fits the vessel. So the light is in accordance to how strong, the light is as strong as it needs to be to give the identity through the vessel. And the vessel is the definition. For instance, chesed. If a person wants to be kind, the character to be kind is the vessel. The light is the energy of the kindness. So the energy of the kindness has to be according to the measurement of the vessel of kindness. And the idea is that the vessel also could limit it. The vessel is strong enough to limit the energy of kindness that should be kind up to a certain point. So it meets properly. Then there's the external. There's an energy that's not limited to a vessel. The vessel can't contain it. For instance, desire is one of those things. You can't contain desire. You can't rationalize desire. Like it says in Yiddish, if a taiv is frank and kasha, you can't ask a question why you want something. Why you desire something, not want. Desire something. I desire it. So it means you can't limit it. It can't be limited into a vessel. What does this mean in our service of God? In prayer, when a person means what's the idea of the lights that are within the person, internalized, and the lights that are encompassing within our service of God, specifically with regard to prayer, that should ignite the passion of fire for God. So he explains, what's the idea of or pnimi, an internal light, is when the love for God comes by contemplation. Again, so that's internalized. Your mind is creating the reason for the love. Meaning, what are you thinking about? What triggers that you should love God? When you understand He is your source of life. Right? I'm alive. I exist because of God. When you realize I exist because of God. No other reason. He is your life. Not just your specific life as an individual, but anything else that exists in this world. It's like I'm separate. I'm the only one dependent on God because He's my life. But other things exist on their own. Anything that exists, the life of anything in the world exists because of God. So when a person realizes that, it means his spinniness. Your mind, so that's an internal idea. You internalize with that idea that He's the source of my life. Nimshach mizeh, from this to create. So then you have a desire, a feeling, a passion for God. But it's contained the idea limits it. It means, why am I loving God? Because He's my life. So because He's my life is the limitation of how much you love God. It defines the love. So that's what it means. It's based on the measurement of that idea. That's if a love is based on. So what's fundamental going on over here? What's internalized over here? It's about you. Why do you love something? Because when you realize that this is my source, this is my highest source of existence comes from Hashem. Everything else doesn't exist. So then it makes sense that you should love God. So but it's dependent on that idea. But what happens if you love God not because He's your life, but because when a person thinks about it and plays it, and he says over here, he talks about the heart versus the mind. And you bring to the depth of your heart. It means not, I don't love God because He's my life. I love God because of the greatness of God. When you realize God is so beyond anything of creation that He doesn't change. There is no change within God. The idea that God doesn't change shows His greatness. And there is no thought that exists that could grasp the essence of God. So what is triggering the love? It's not because He's your life, because of the greatness of God. When a person realizes that tichla elav nefesh kochai, therefore your heart wants to be connected to that greatness. Lihibatal b'mitzios, that you want to totally lose your identity because your identity, your mitzias, your being is so limited. And therefore you want to become one with the oneness of God, which is so great, which is of a niya violation. You see, God doesn't change. And no thought can even grasp how great he is. When a person pays attention to that idea, and with that, realizing how great God is and how far you are from God, because just being limited in this world, and or especially on top of that, if you've created sin that separates you from that greatness. That you went down such a low place, in a world of separation. And you realize that you're comparing your existence to God's greatness. Not that means kiyuch hayech is a totally different thought. Because you love yourself, basically. What's the number one thing? You have to love yourself. Because you love yourself, so therefore you love the source of yourself. Here it's not about you. It's realizing fakert, on the contrary, realizing how distant you are from Hashem and how great God is. Then the love for God is so great, it's much greater than you could contain. Because it's not about you. Before it's all about you. So therefore, it's only as long as it feels that feeling of kiyuch hayecha, because he's your life. So that's oris b'kelim, that's lights in vessels. It's a contained feeling. But here, when the idea is on the contrary, how great God is and how distant, how far you are from that greatness. So then the love is beyond your company, beyond you can't even contain it because it's so much greater than you. You can't even contain this great love. That's the idea of close nefesh. What's close nefesh? When the soul leaves the body out of pashat yearning for desire for God. It's because it could only be triggered by something outside of yourself. Because if about yourself, how could it cause you to leave yourself? If the whole reason you love God is because of yourself, how would it cause you to leave yourself? Close nefesh means that you love God so much you can't even exist anymore. Souls who died like that, right? The sons of Aaron. Why did they die? They had such a love for God, they couldn't contain themselves in their bodies. But that's only if you love your God beyond yourself. If you love God about yourself, why would you aspire for God if it's all about your existence? And that's what it means, the higher level of love, with all your might outside of yourself. When we say with all your heart, yes, it means your Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. It's still your Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. It's your soul. Is outside of yourself. Much greater. Usually, so now we understand the system of the general idea of the chain of creation with the lights that are internal, lights that are external. And in Avoda, that's the idea, the difference between love that's created by Kiyuch Hayecha, because he's your life, and the love that's created because of God's greatness. And it says, with regard to the chariot, that Yecheskel saw in the vision of the chariot, that we find that the Pnei Ariel Yamin, that the line is to the right, which the right is stronger and larger. That's why it says in the Pesach Eliyahu, the right extends longer than the left. So the line is to the right. Pnei Shar Mismal, and the ox is to the left. So if that's the case, the ox is on a lower level than the lion in the chariot, because the right is higher than the left. Because the line is to the right. Nevertheless, what do we find? That if the line is so great, but in this world we find, how is it that the ox is a kosher animal? It's a pure animal, it's an animal that one could eat, one could sacrifice. And the aryeh is a beast, and B, it's a beast. It's a chay, not a behema. It's not even domesticated. And it's tameya, it's not pure. You can't eat a lion. You can't sacrifice a lion. It's a non-kosher animal. How could it be if the lion on the chariot is higher than the ox? The idea is and that's the whole point. Something that's higher in heaven. The lion is so great. It's such a great light, like the light that's outside of a person's ability to contain. The lion is so great, it can't manifest in this physical world in a kosher animal. Because the ability to be kosher means that you could do something with it. It's a tangible light. But the light of the lion is so great because it comes from the right, therefore it can't come down into this world, into a space of being a kosher animal. What do we say in Aryeh? Aryeh is the Gvura, Aryeh is a lion. The power of the lion. What does it mean, the power, the Gibor? The power in the way of the powerful lights, the great powerful lights of the lion, that's why it's on the right. Means the whole idea is the shor The ox is the Ari is Yamin, but it's with Gvura. It's Yamin with power. So it's so much power. So its light is so powerful. There is no vessel that can contain it. Only if the vessel would contain it, then it would be a kosher animal. But because the vessel can't contain it, so the form, the body of the lion, so to say, or the existence of the lion in this world can't contain the great light. There's no vessel that can contain it. So therefore, it doesn't manifest into a kosher animal. You can't do anything kosher with it. Can't use its skins for tefillin, etc. Shenichal b'kedusha, that it should be able to be included in kedusha in this world. Contrary to the animal, to the domestic kosher animal, because it's a more dimmer light. Therefore, it could come down. It's a contained light because it's not so powerful, and it could come down to a kosher animal here in this world. But because there was the shattering of the vessels, so the great light of the lion comes down in a shattered way. So it comes down, but in a shattered way, because there's no vessel that can contain it. It comes down. It's a totally non-kosher animal. It's totally from the three levels of impurity. Therefore, it manifests into a beast, not a domestic animal that's impure. So the lion exists in this world, but it's taking the broken sparks of the great lion that's on the chariot, from the holy lion. That's why in the Bet HaMikdash, right? What was if anyone? I just made a siyum yesterday on Kachim. One of the shape of the Beis HaMikdash was a lion. The way the Beis HaMikdash was actually built, narrow in the back and broader to the front, was as a lion lies. The image, the fire that came down from heaven to consume the animals was the image of a lion, a non-kosher animal. Why? Because from Kedusha, lion is much more powerful. And the Beis HaMikdash was beyond all the changes and differences and limitations of this world. So in this world, the lion's a non-kosher animal. But the lion it represents the tribe of Judah. David was all about being the lion. The Beis HaMikdash was built like a lion. The fire that came down was like a lion. But in this world, physically, it's a non-kosher animal. Because it only takes the sparks of the holy lion, but it can't be contained into the body of the lion. But it can't come down like a kosher animal comes down. It can only be an encompassing energy from above. And that's like the idea of in the impurities. I'm going to say this in short, but we know that in the lights of purity they're 10, and the lights of impurity is 11. The reason is because the light that gives life to the impure lights is its own number. So the very fact that it is the source of impurity, it's counted as impurity, because if not for it, impurity wouldn't exist. But it's not, only the in between, so to say, the conduit between purity and impurity. So too, the lion in kedusha, there's a in between that allows for the lion of this world to siphon off the energy of the lion above, but the lion above is holy and the lion below is not. Okay. Now, the Zeu she'Esav hayibachar. Now he explains, what's this have to do with our story here in this week's parsha? It says Esav was the firstborn. Esav's from the world before the kings that existed before the whole crash, so to say, happened. The spiritual crash, right? Crashes happened spiritually also. That he said, Bahar Seir Be'eretz Edom. He lived in Har Seir in the land of Edom. He was the source of these powerful lights of the world of chaos. But the problem is, one of the problems of the powerful lights was that part of it was their inability to coexist. So therefore is Vayamas Vayimlach, Vayamas Vayimlach. When one king was a king, the next one had to die. The reason why there was a shattering of the vessels, one of the reasons was the inability, which he explains about in the previous Maamar, the inability for coexistence in the powerful lights. And therefore it shattered. It's an inability, a lack of balance and consistency, and a lack of planning, so to say, seeing outside of yourself. So because of that, all those reasons combined caused that there should be a shattering of the vessels. There's no vessels. There's only lights that are uncontained. And therefore, the line above is high, but below it's siphoning off broken pieces. Shubechinas shilya hamakefes esavlad. It's the shilya is the not a biblical cord. It's the placenta of the child. So Esav is the placenta, right? The placenta protects the child from the outside. It's not internalized. Shekadmu Vlad, first comes the placenta. That's the first part of how the process of a child being born, created. Ve'ikruhu Vlad should know, but the idea is that there should be a child in the placenta. And when the child is actually born, we throw out the placenta. Doesn't remain. Because it's only external. It only exists while the child's in the mother's stomach. Then the placenta has a purpose. That God is beyond the nations. Why? Because the goyim stayed, so to say, Esav stayed, as unpleasant as this may sound, but the nations stayed as a placenta. That there's no real purpose there. For Yaakov, the idea of Yaakov was actually to rectify Esav, to no longer, so to say, no longer be a placenta. Yud Eikav, that Yaakov is internal. He takes the Yud of Hashem's name and he's able to bring it down to the Eikav, to the heel. Havaya, the difference is that Havaya is Elekeinu. The idea that Yaakov says God is Havaya is my God. It's not. It means if you're just existing but not recognizing your existence, so it's not Elekeinu. But yeah, it means not my God. It's just okay. So I exist because of God, but now I'm moving on. I'm separate, like the placenta is separate. V'haftas Hashem Elekecha. You love Hashem. You're a Lord. Hagam sheyud hui ar mitzum semes. But in order for that to be, you have to have the yud, which is a tiny dot, like we've learned before, that it's an internal light. And for it to be internal, it has to be condensed down to a yud, a small letter. Halei mitzari, like it's a small city. And because it's small, you can internalize. It's not a great light. It's overwhelming. And the only way for it to internalize is for it to become condensed like the letter yud. And that's why the name of Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei, is a yud first. And how does it trigger that you should get excited about God? You should feel the love for God. Is when the light gets condensed, narrated, contracted, so you can internalize it. It becomes Elokeinu. Esav has great lights, but part of the problem is because it's so great and it's not internalized. It's not Elokeinu. It's not my God. It's separate from me. It's like the lion. The lion at the end is taking from the great lion of above, but it's not kosher. It's not a kosher animal. It doesn't change him. It doesn't change the lion. The lion can internalize that light. It exists from it. It even has the characters of the great lion. But it's not a kosher. It doesn't change it. It's not connected to it. But when you have the yud, yes, it's condensed, it's small, but that allows for you to personalize it. And you have the passion of the tefillah. It's my God. But because it's so small, it's able, your heart could contain it, and therefore your heart could get excited from it. And so too, when you do a mitzvah, the light that goes into the mitzvah is that you sanctify b'mitzvah with God's commandments. The light is able to go into the talis, into the tefillin, into the Shabbos candles, like the limb that can contain the energy within the body. In the days of the forefathers, that they didn't yet have the physical Torah given on Mount Sinai. They had the same idea, but it was limited. It wasn't just ideas that I'm feeling holy, I'm feeling spiritual. They also had limitations, the wells and the sticks. A lot of people get nervous, and we learned before about the difference in the Bryce and the Mishnah. The details of the mitzvah, all the shiurim, tzitzis have to be so long. The time limitations, the carbon can only be eaten in so much period of time. You have to burn it before or after that time. All the limitations of space, time, shiurim, all that it represents the concept of oiris b'kelim, of lights and vessels, that it's defined, the shiurim. For a menorah is not a concept. A menorah is the 7 candles of the menorah, or the 8 on Hanukkah. The sukkah, it's not just a concept. The sukkah is not a sukkah unless it meets the measurements that halacha says, because the lights come into vessels. The limitations is the vessels. But the nations, unlike Yaakov, that's connected to Elokeinu, he's my God, in a space, in a definition, yet it's small. but it's mine. It's personalized. The fisher ram v'nisalem, because it's above them. It's like the lion that exists from the great lion, but it's not doesn't connect it. It doesn't show in the reality of the lion in this world. It's only encompassing. You can't internalize it. And one of the reasons is that Esav is higher than Yaakov because it doesn't have the condensed light. It's a great light, but also that the vessels are broken. And fundamentally, the problem is that there's no bittul. He doesn't want to nullify itself to Hashem. And the condition to be connected is love. You have to. You're not ready to commit to be nullified yourself for Hashem. I'm separate. Yeah, I could siphon off you. You give me life. You're my battery. I'm not dependent on you. I don't want to be dependent. I want to be nullified to you. Yes, he's the God of my God. What does it mean, the God of my God? I have other gods, other things that dictate what's important to me. What is the idea in general of a carbon, of a sacrifice? That we take the animals, the kosher animals, and we bring them, which is a representation of us sacrificing from ourselves. It's a mayim nukvin, it's a female waters, it's something that we're giving to create a reach nichayach, a pleasant smell for Hashem. Just like a pleasant smell triggers a person to kind of get, if a person's feeling weak, you put over a strong smell, wakes the person up, energizes the person. The idea is the carbon, the sacrifice represented all the void of a person to show how you are giving from yourself. And that's why today, what is the dam v'chelev? What does it mean to spray the blood and the fat today? Is your dam v'chelev. That's one of the reasons people fasted. Because when a person fasts, you're giving from your fat and your blood to God. So it's the same idea. You're giving something from yourself, a pleasant from yourself to God. The idea is that you want, through the carbon, is to bring godliness within yourself. To bring God down. The idea is that the carbon should trigger, that there should be a revelation and a shechina, a resting of God's greatness within the person. Within me, you say internalized, mamish. So the carbon triggers a chain where there's the presence of God connects more with the person. That was the idea of the carbon. And therefore, depending on what the purpose of the carbon was, whether it was a carbon chatas or a shlamim or an oila, there was a holiday sacrifice. Sometimes what had to come down was atonement. What's the idea of bringing a gift, so to say? Mincha is a gift, right? What's the idea of bringing a gift, so to say, to God? Is the idea, like we've learned this idea many times, it's the chiddush, something unique. Something chadash means something that the king doesn't have. If a king has billions of dollars, to give the king $5, it's not a gift. So what do you try to do? What does someone do when you want to gift someone? So I can't give that person a Rolex. I can't buy that person a car. I'm coming from a place where they sell things that you can't get in other countries, right? I'm going to find the gift that's unique, that's original, something that they can't get, not because it's expensive. It's just not. It's something different. It's a chiddush, something new. And that's how, by bringing the chiddush, something new, then you could show. Then you start the relationship. Oh, this person brought me something that's special. And that brings, that's the only way to get attention from the king. Because if you're going to give the king another diamond, he doesn't need that. But it's the chiddush, something unique that you're bringing the king. And in our case, and the uniqueness attracts the attention, the lave, the heart of the king. An example always given is the parrot. Why the parrot? Because in the parrot we see something that talks, a bird that talks. So it's the chiddush. That's something unique. That's something not regular. Although the bird has nothing intelligent to say, really. And a person, if you want to bring something that talks to a person, you speak. A person speaks much better than a parrot, but that's not a chiddush. The king has plenty of people who talk to him, who drive him crazy the whole day, talk in his ear. But the parrot is something that the king doesn't have. Even though a person talks much more intelligently than the most intelligent parrot, it's the chiddush, it's the uniqueness of the idea. The idea that a bird should speak is something that's not regular. And that brings attention from the king, that the king all of a sudden says, oh, and what is the example here in our life? The idea that a person comes down to this world, and in all the complications, and all this, the struggle, and all that you have to put up with, and you're able to stop and make a place for God in your life, that's a chiddush. That's something unique. Because that the angels should stand there and say Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish 1,000 times a day, that's not special to God. That's of course the angels are going to say God's holy. They live in a holy space. The idea that a person could find space for God, that's like the parrot speaking. And that brings the attention of the king. And then he pays attention and responds and has a communication and gives to the simpleton person. Therefore, when you want to awaken, so to say, the halosman is to bring up the female waters, the reaction from below above, it's all dependent on what you're doing. You have to awaken it, which is nafshis Yisrael and maguf, and that only happens the way the soul is in the body, with all the complications that the body gives, and all that you have to push back, and all the desires, and you have to fight, all the skafia, restraining yourself, transforming yourself. Even though the angels are standing there so high and they're so pure and so holy, and they never do anything wrong. They're standing there from the 6 days of creation. And it's constantly saying God is holy. So on a level of performance, it's like the person talking. How could you compare what a human could do to an angel? Also, the angels are on a much higher level of intellectual. Their comprehension of God, and their appreciation for God's greatness is much greater. Their desire for God is much greater. Here, we have so many things confusing us. Machshavas, foreign thoughts, rabbis hatardas, all the anxieties, all the things that are weighing on us, just to get through the day, just to make it to the end of the day. And even the little bit of love that you could ignite at those pockets of time of prayer or learning, as soon as you go out to the world, it goes away from the distractions and overwhelmingness or other reasons of why it passes. It doesn't have the consistency of the angel who's in the same level standing there for 6 days of creation. But that's not a chiddush. The angel stands there, is for sure it's going to stand there. How else should it be? But those pockets of moments that the person finds within this world, because of all these complications and all these tearless and anxieties and overwhelmingness, that's what excites God. It's the uniqueness that the person could do. It's a person's ability here in this world. And how does a person eat? How does a person speak? Right? For a person to speak, you have to eat, you have to drink. I mean, even just to stand there and daven, you partially have to do physical things. You have to go to sleep, you have to dress, you have to take a shower, to the mikveh, you have to eat, you have to have a coffee. Until you're even able to stand davening, you have so many things that you're dependent on. If I weren't to eat for 3 days, you become too weak to pray. You won't be able to speak properly. There's other things that in order just to present yourself to God, you have so many things that physically you have to get through. You're cold. But nevertheless, even though that your ability to daven is so dependent, forget about the anxieties that you have to overcome, but just to get yourself to stand in shul, you're so dependent on physical things to get there. But nevertheless, because you're pushing through all that. This is very, very, very pleasurable and very precious to God. That's like the parrot. That's why when we bring all the sacrifices, the sheep and the goats, the way it comes into this world, that's something new, that you're taking an animal that's representing also like all what it took to get there. That kind of desire, that kind of effect, you don't see in the upper worlds. This brings up the avoda of the person to God. That's why it's like a gift. Mincha Rosh Tevis Man. Then the words mincha is the first two letters is Maim Nukvim, which is the female water, is the avoda that you're doing in this world. Ches is the chachma, and Mazel Ches is Notzer Chesed, Umashibi Behei, Behi Baram. The idea of bringing mincha is to bring the combination and what the person is bringing towards, so to say, the sacrifice. Okay. So that's the way it's now. And Yaakov is the voda that should be. And Esav is the voda of the nations, that's the placenta. That's makif. There's not Hashem Elokeinu. But when Mashiach comes, it's not going to be like that. Let's just go a little further. V'hinei, lasad lavai, when Mashiach comes in time in the future, like Tzefania says, everyone's going to speak a single language. And as King David says in chapter 105, the greatness is going to be in the nations. And it says, come to God, the families of the nations. The nations are going to say. Why are we mentioning the nations about the times of Mashiach? The idea is, because we're the avodah of Yaakov, yes, that's within ourselves. But what are we going to do? We have to go pick up those broken, shattered sparks that fell and are giving life to outside existences. And we have to be that middle component that's able to bring the sparks back. Or that's how the sparks went out in the first place. That it all, in its completeness, should come back and be elevated. And the idea is to bring Esav back before the kings and the vessels crash. Bring the lion back to its source. The idea is that Yaakov is the one who could do this, because Yaakov is the Yud that goes down to the heel, and like the Torah was given to Yaakov, Atem Krim Adam, Adam Ma, Matikun, were the world of fixing. Ula'asad Lavim Mashiach comes, Yisbar Gam Esav. Shemi Oil Mateo, when Mashiach comes, it's not going to just be that Yaakov is serving God. That even the world of Esav, the world of chaos, is going to be elevated. Bechinas Makiv, the encompassing energy that can't be contained, will be itself remain back to its original holiness. And not just that Esav is going to be complete, but Esav is going to be all the way it's included in Yaakov himself. Yaakov is going to get the elevation with Esav. That's why Yaakov sends, like it says in the original Maamar, Yaakov sends to Esav to see maybe he's ready now. And he finds out he's not ready now. So Yaakov has to get to work on Esav. In the past 3,000 plus years, we've been doing that. Yaakov gam b'chinas hamakim. It's not just that Esav gets complete, but Yaakov, because he's the one who completes Esav, he also has the encompassing energy of Esav. Then Yaakov, which is Ma, which is what, which is Bittul, which is fixing, elevates Hashem's name the way it's 63. The different ways you combine, you spell out God's name, which the level of Sag is the level of Esav, which is the level of Makiv, of encompassing. Like it says, Eishes Chayil, the woman is going to be a teres ba'ala, a crown to her husband. Now, he says like this. I just want to go a little further. That the idea is basically, what he continues to say in this Maamar is that Yaakov has to now, because he realizes he has to fix Esau. So it's a process. Number one, the process is the animals he sends. The animals he sends Esau are not the animals of Karbonos. He doesn't send sheep and goats. I mean, he sends some of them, but he also sends non-kosher animals. He also sends complete animals. He doesn't sacrifice. It means when you're dealing with Esav, it's a different avodah. Now, that's something what the Alter Rebbe says is that only Yaakov could do that. Unfortunately, where it's got lost in translation is where other peoples throughout history try to duplicate what Yaakov did in their own way of kind of compromising Torah mitzvahs and what they felt would be the way of elevating Esau. But it doesn't work like that. Torah was given to us in Mount Sinai, told us exactly what we have to do and how we do the karbanos. But Yaakov lived in a different time, and Yaakov is Yaakov. But the idea is like this. What you're trying to bring down is what you have to give up. Means, for instance, right? When a person tries to pitch an idea, when you want to get something, a gift from someone, so to try to get one gift, a smaller gift is one thing that you're going to kind of present, so that person should give you that gift. But if you're trying to get a larger gift or a different gift, you can't make the same presentation. So depending on what you're trying to bring down, that's what you have to give. That's the halas man. So how could Yaakov bring down this great encompassing energy of Esav, which is outside of the box, so to say, outside the vessels? So you have to give the same, you have to give according to what you're trying to receive. Means in order to get an encompassing energy, but in avoda, you have to give 100%, not just 100%, 100% beyond yourself. You have to give your encompassing energy. B'frat, he says specifically, when a person looks at themselves and finds within themselves all the distractions and all the things that are holding you down and all the things that are pulling you down, so in order to get out of that, there's certain situations. So first, the Alter Rebbe is going over here is that to get the encompassing energy is sometimes it's not enough just to go do the day-to-day. When you feel like your mamish being held down and you need to be freed from all that, the way to do that is not to try to do balanced things. You have to push it, scream out to God beyond any kind of limitation. The mile mechtesh says more than your body, your soul could handle. So when Yaakov sees Esav, so we could reflect that in two ways. One is Yaakov seeing Esav outside himself, and within avoda we could also see how Yaakov sees Esav within inside himself. So how do you deal how do you deal with the Esav inside of yourself? So when Yaakov saw that, he said hikruv mincha. He has to give a mincha gift the Esav achiv shalmayil to Esav the way he is above, but a gift that he would respond to. The way he is in the world of chaos, Hashem hu achiv, where they're brothers. Means Esav in his perfection. So because Yaakov is made up of the ideas of that unsettledness of ratzai, I have a desire, and a shav I have to bring it down. Shaivu b'chinas yudek, the idea of shav is to bring the yud down into the heel, the upper level into the lower level. The ratzai, the yearning, b'chinas bittul gamit, to totally nullify yourself. That's the avoda of a person. A person has to have the avoda of constantly ratzai, you're always yearning towards Hashem, which is kind of losing yourself. But then you have to say, 1 second, God doesn't want me to lose myself. What am I going to do? I'm reaching up. I'm going to take that energy and bring it back down because there's an avoda. Something has to be accomplished there. To bring down this encompassing energy. And then the Esav, the way he's down here, will be nullified. And meaning to say that and then it's going to be a transformation of nations. Meaning to say, what Yaakov has to do is in order for Yaakov is Ratziv V'Shoif, he's saying. Yaakov means that Yaakov is constantly unsettled. And meaning unsettled means that there's always an avodah, there's something to do. And in that avodah there's the Ratzah, the yearning to go up, and to take what you've gotten and bring it back down. Not to lose yourself. Never lose yourself. That's Rabbi Akiva. That's versus the other teachers. That if Rabbi Akiva goes into the Pardes, if he goes into the garden of the depth of godliness, it's only so he should be able to nichnas b'shalom, so he's yatsa b'shalom. He walks in with the right intentions. So when we're trying to reach Esav, we don't want to lose ourselves in Esav. We have to get from Esav this really strong energy, but bring it back down, because then we could change the world. The idea that Yaakov is he doesn't want to leave Esav's reality in this space and find, so to say, the head of Esav, the Esav, his brother, the way he is, the way they're brothers, Yaakov and Esav. That's not enough, because then you're just leaving the reality. You're finding the inner good of Esav, but then you're leaving the ugliness of Esav as is. But that's not going to bring Mashiach. If it means to bring Mashiach, you have to reveal Esav's holiness and transform that ugliness to be also to no longer be ugly, because that is Yaakov's avodah. He's tikkun, he fixes. And it comes from that unsettled Ratzeh V'Shoiv. If he has an experience of something holy, it's V'Shoiv, he has to bring it into this world. So if he wants to get in touch with the essence, the core of Esav, it's not just to disconnect from Esav's ugliness, but to transform Esav's ugliness. And that's what it means when Mashiach is going to come. He says the idea is, Oz Yukim, when he brings down Esav and transforms him the way he is, that it no longer is to be ugly Esav. Oz Ehepech Alam, then the nations are going to change their language. No longer is it going to be the enemy. And that's the avodah that Yaakov showed us as a sign to the children. How do you bring Mashiach? How do you bring Mashiach? It's to get in touch with the highest energies, even the encompassing energies, even those energies that are mamish Esav, but you have to bring them down to this world to make the changes. So if how we have to do fixing within our own space, the Torah tells us, we have to bring certain korbanos every day. The Pesach, we have to bring certain certain sacrifices on Pesach, certain holiday sacrifices on Shavuos. But if you want to deal with Esau, again, this is the very tricky thing. This is where people sometimes step out of where their space. Even if you're dealing with Esav now, you have to deal only the way Torah tells us to do it. The Torah now tells us these are the sacrifices that have to be sacrificed. The Rebbe said in the final years, the Rebbe says we have to have Oris the Torah became the Tikkun. You can't lose yourself. You can't get lost in the lights of chaos, because anyone in history who's tried to get lost in the lights of chaos, they end up getting sucked into the broken vessels. So the only way to do it is if you want to get in touch with encompassing lights, it's only for the purpose to bring it in within the system of Torah and how Torah tells you to do it. Yaakov, as an exception to the rule, was able to do the sacrifices not the way the Torah said. He was able to send camels and donkeys, non-kosher animals, non-slaughtered animals, because Yaakov was trying to make and he was able to stay focused because he's Yaakov, he's not us, to be able to make the transformation in Esav at that moment. But after that, it has to go in a process of the way Torah says to do it. That's the point of what he's saying. But to try to inspire Esau, we don't know how to do that. What are the sacrifices? What are the measurements? Only Yaakov, he knew how to do it. That's why when the sacrifices, so to say, the mincha that he sent, different type of sacrifices. We don't find anywhere else in Torah that there's sacrifices like what Yaakov sent Esau. The karbanis the tikkun, v'shir machem, and other numbers. He sent non-kosher animals. Shem tmeim b'karbanis the tikkun. Ach b'karbanis the teich miyit in Torah mitamei sham k'chshech ha'kayr. And the Rebbe continues. I'm going to stop here, but the point that the Rebbe wants to get to is that what Yaakov was trying to do was he tried to do a quick fix at the time when Esav wasn't ready, but that Yaakov started the process. But we now do it through a process of Torah. We have to do it through Torah mitzvahs. We go out to the world. We're slowly picking up the pieces. We're not going to and eventually that transformation is going to happen. Everything is going to fall into line. But Yaakov, he started it in a major maneuver, but afterwards the Torah was given to be given in a specific way. All right, everyone. Yasher koach for joining. Again, this is a fascinating Maamar, also complicated ideas. But I'm happy we studied it together. Laila Tov and Shavua Tov. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shavua